All right, so at this point, the recording is beginning. As I was saying, this first session is going to be similar to what we were just seeing inside of Stepic's initial pass-through of just going through the features of Quorum Studio, but this time we're going to actually look at the features. We're all going to move through them together. So if you don't already have Quorum Studio up, I recommend that you get it up now, and we're going to just move through using some of the new stuff together. So let me begin sharing my screen.
Meeting controls window.
All right, so at this point, everyone should be able to see Quorum Studio on my screen. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So the very first thing that I want to do is I want to just show you guys how to do stuff with the scenes. The scenes aren't the only thing we've added, but they are by far the biggest and flashiest of the features. So in Quorum Studio here.
Quorum Studio 2.0.0 window. Code tabs tab control.
The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a brand new project. I'm going to make a scene project. Now, I know that some of the people that we already have in here, you guys have used Quorum Studio, the previous version. You guys already know what you're doing. I'm going to assume that for what we're doing here, no one's touched anything so far, in part because we're recording and this is a
new notification from Slack.
Everyone.
New message.
I got to remember the screen reader is going to read every time someone posts something in Slack. That's going to be fun. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new project. The way we can do that is either visually, you can use the toolbar using the new project button that's up here. Alternatively, you can use the menu.
File collapsed 1 of it. Expanded. New project control plus N1 of 7.
And in the menu, we can also see the hotkey for it, which is Control N. If I make a new project.
New project templates tree view. Level 2 blank a blank application in Quorum sets up a default project with no source code inside of it.
It's a little funny. The dialogue looks just a little bit skewed on my machine because of my setup here. The important part here, though, is that if I
new notification from Slack
that are available.
Main set level 1 scenes collapsed 3 of 5 level 1 expanded level 2 blank scene. This project creates a default.
This scene template that I'm selecting here. This is what Stepic just showed you. This is the main way we interact with scenes in the game is through one of these scene projects. So to start, I'm just going to use all the default settings, and I'm just going to go ahead and create this.
Name it. Locate. Browse. Cancel. OK button. Blank scene application project loaded.
Now, in the project tree over here, I can jump to that using Control 1.
Projects tree view. Level 1 blank scene application collapse. Expanded. Level 2. Scenes. Source code collapse 3 of 3 level 2.
Compared to a normal project that you would see in Quorum, you can see that we have 2 extra folders, these resources and scenes folders. We're going to look at each of these, but the first thing I want to do is I just want to look at the code.
Expanded. Level 3 main.quorum 1 of 1. Code tabs tab control. Main.quorum tab. Code edit text box document use libraries.game.game.
So looking through the code that's produced by the scene template, if you're experienced with Quorum and you've used Quorum Studio before, you might notice that this looks really similar to the default game template that we provide you already. And that's for a really good reason. That's because this is just a game in Quorum where we're doing a little bit of magic behind the scenes. There's only a few extra lines of code here that are special.
File set path. File selected.
These 3 lines, file set the path, load the scene from the file, these are all that we've added to the code in Quorum. And so a whole bunch of stuff is happening behind the scenes, but any of the experience that you already have doing games, game programming, all of that stuff still holds. You'll still be using it in parts, but some of the stuff we've done is to, as Stepic was saying, make it easier to build your sort of static level environments, or to make it easier to build your zones where you're going to be doing stuff in. And as Stepic was mentioning, we've made some improvements to the code editor broadly. He talked a little bit about how we have Git support in the editor, so we have these blocks on the side. So if you're in a version-controlled project with teams, those blocks will appear now. We also improved a bunch of things in the accessibility, and some of these improvements, I understand, have been giving some trouble for things like
File set path. EMA. Spelling error. Use libraries.game.g.
I have an error on my line of code now. We now report to the accessibility system that there is a spelling error there, which we think is going to be an improvement, but it seems like we're maybe being a little aggressive in that.
Stepic has joined the meeting alert.
Oh, I hear Stepic has just joined the meeting. That's true. I actually didn't have a visual pop-up for that, so the screen reader just gave me more information than it would have had if I was just using my eyeballs. Hey, Stepic.
Hey,
Just so I don't screw up your mojo, why don't we just have you keep going through this one, and then we'll, because it's the same content for the first session on both tracks anyway.
This was your plan all along.
Yeah, I know, it's secret, right? And then we'll switch over to the breakouts after. I apologize, everyone. For some reason, Zoom decided that right now would be a good time to render that local video. So cool. So go ahead and keep going. I apologize for interrupting, and I'll get mine set up for the next
Line
session.
feed.
As I was saying, a whole bunch of improvements to the editor, and as Stefik was also mentioning, just tons of improvements to the performance of the environment, so it should not melt your laptops anymore like it did last year. Also, just lots of bug fixes. So this is the code editor, and it looks mostly the same. In terms of what else is being provided in the scene environment, let's go ahead and look at those other folders in the project view. So I'm going to use the hotkey Control-1. This will jump me back to the projects.
Projects tree view. Main. Level 2 source code expanded 3 of 3. Scenes collapsed 2 of 3 level 2.
So if I look inside here, I'm going to start by just showing you the resources folder. It's nothing special.
Expanded. Level 3 tile sets expanded.
Inside here, we just have some files. The important part is the PNGs. These are just loading images the same way the game engine already was. We're doing a little bit of extra magic to do it automatically. That's what those JSON files are. We just have some extra stuff we've already written to make it easier to bring stuff in. The other stuff, the more useful and important thing for us to know about.
Level 2 resource. Level 3 collapse. Scenes expanded. Level 3 scene.qs 1 of 1. Code tabs tab control. Scene.qs tab. Scene.qs 00.
So this is the scene environment. This is the scene editor. And Stefik already showed this to you. He gave you some of the information about it, but we're going to just kind of cover it all again, and we're going to start interacting with it to get a sense of what it is. We're going to be doing this repeatedly over the course of EPIQ just because the best way to understand something is repetition and using it, right? So there are a few things that are important here. The environment that we're looking in here has a grid which stretches across the scene. And each of these squares in the grid is by default 32 by 32 pixels. It's not important that you know the actual number, but what's important to know is that this is where most of our work is going to happen. We're going to be using the squares of the grid to help us line things up and to give us a sense of where things are when we're maneuvering around it. As Stefik already mentioned as well, there's this thick bordered region in the center. This represents where the camera is looking at when we start the game. The grid encompasses more than just where the camera is looking at, and that's on purpose because you might be doing something in your game where you are moving the camera. You can imagine something like a side scroller where you're going to be moving your camera, panning left or right. You'd be doing some kind of like real-time strategy or something where you need to move across a large map vertically as well as horizontally. We don't know exactly what you're going to try and do, so the engine, as much as possible, try to make things easier for you where we can and don't restrict you where we don't know what you're doing. Aside from that, there is visually, in the bottom left corner, there is a pale blue square in the bottom left of this rectangular region, and this is the cursor. So importantly, this is going to be how I get accessible information about the environment. So I can move this with the arrows.
32-0. 32-32.
Right now, it's only telling me the coordinates that the cursor is moving to, but with the screen reader on, it's also going to tell me about the items I'm navigating over once we have some things in the scene. Currently, we don't have anything in the scene, so let's
New notification from Slack. New.
To start, I'm going to go back to my projects tree view.
Projects tree view. Scene.qs 1 of 1 level 3.
And by the way, if you ever want to navigate between these components, all of these hotkeys are available as well from the menu, especially in the Windows menu. You can see that.
Windows collapse. Expanded. Focus next window F.
We have a whole bunch of things for moving to the projects, move to the editor. That's Control-2 is going to get you to the scene editor or the code editor, whichever is there, as well as the output, the errors, etc. Basically, just the control number keys will all take you there. For right now,
projects control +1 3 of 10. Projects tree view. Scene.qs 1 of 1 level 3.
Compared to the previous version of Quorum Studio, you might have noticed that we are in a tabbed pane with 2 extra tabs now. Previously, this was just the project tree. It only had the files and allowed you to navigate between your code files. There's 2 extra tabs now. There's Scene and Palette. We're going to start by looking at the scene. And to do that, I'm going to move to the next tab using Control-Tab on Windows. If you're on Mac, this is going to be Control right bracket, which is not exactly the key we'd like to use, but due to some technical issues, we couldn't use Control-Tab because Mac captures certain kinds of things. Certain hotkeys are reserved by the system. So I'm going to Control-Tab.
Scene items tree view. Level 1 default layer 2D collapsed 1 of 1.
This takes me into the scene tab, and here's where I can look at some of the items in my scene. Right now, there's just a single layer. This is the 2D layer that we're working with, and I'm going to expand it and look what's inside.
Expanded. Level 2 cameras collapsed 1 of 2. Items 2 of 2 level 2.
There are two things that we can look at inside a layer. We can look at the camera. This is the camera that's being used by the editor. So if I wanted to move around in the environment, I could.
Cameras collapsed 1 of 2. Expanded. Level 3 editor camera 1 of 1.
I can select the camera.
Camera controller.
And visually, there is a properties window, which is popped up in the bottom right of the scene editor, which gives me some information about the position and zoom level of the camera. I can jump to this using the keyboard using Control-P.
X edit selected 400.0. Y edit 300.0. Zoom edit 1.0.
If I change any of these values, these will change what the camera is doing in the scene editor. So for example, I can change the zoom value to be
1, 2.
2.0, and now the camera is zoomed right in on the center of the editor. For the most part, I expect that you will not need to move the camera left or right or up and down. You won't need to change the position all that often unless you're working outside of that square. But changing the zoom can be helpful if you're working on things where you have just tiny little assets or you want to be able to zoom out to get a better view. I'm going to go ahead and set this back to the original zoom value for now.
1. Close button. Scene items tree view. Editor camera 1 of 1 level 3.
The other thing that I can do is if I select the camera.
Camera controller.
I'm in the scene. I'm not going into my properties right now, but just using the arrow keys.
416 300. 384 300. 352 300. 384 300.
This allows me to move around the camera using just the keys. So if you select the camera, use the arrow keys, you can move around the camera as well. You can also adjust the scale up and down using the same zoom keys that we would use for other components, which I believe is Alt plus and Alt minus. That doesn't currently report any accessible information. If there's anything in the environment that we run into like that, where I actually didn't realize it didn't report anything, feel free to let us know if you run into anything. We're really proud of this release, but it's an ongoing process. If you find something, please let us know. That's how we improve things for you guys. For right now, the other thing that we can see inside the scene palette over on the left side, if I go back to that.
Scene items tree view. Edit level 2 items 2 of 2.
There's this items header, and this items header currently is empty. There's nothing in it. That's because there is nothing in the scene right now. So we're going to change that. That brings us to the third tab that is in the project tree. So I'm going to Control Tab again to move over to it.
Scene palette tree view. Level 1 primitives 2D collapsed 1 of 4.
Now, this is where we're going to actually do things with our scene, start making it have something to work with. There's a few different categories of items that are in here, and these correspond to those images that I showed you earlier inside that resources folder.
New notification from Slack. New message in number general.
And pop one of these open, I can see that.
Expanded. Level 2 circle 1 of 2.
This is showing what Stepic has already shown us previously. The palette is a visual environment showing you the things that you can drag and drop into the scene. Inside the primitives 2D, I can see that there is this circle and square shape, very basic, simple shapes that I can just do some stuff with. If I move further down.
Level 1 characters 2D collapsed 2 of 4. Expanded.
Some of these different categories have subcategories within them to help you find different components. Inside this, you can see that we have some basic characters, just a boy and girl model.
Level expanded.
And each of these, this particular one has like frames of animation. So if you wanted to go to the effort of animating your sprites, you could do that using some of the assets that are in here. Alternatively, if you want something that's more about building up your level.
Collapsed. Girl. Level. Nature Summer 2D collapsed 4 of 4 level. Expanded. Level 2 decoration collapsed 1 of 6.
These last two categories, the Nature Summer 2D and the Dungeon 2D, these have more things that allow you to actually build up your level in your game. And this is where a lot of the elements that go into building stuff up are going to come from. These
Dirt collapsed 2 of 6 level 2. Expanded.
A whole lot of terrain tiles that are of a few different categories. You can see that the categories that are here.
Collapsed. Grass collapsed 3 of 6. Stone collapsed 4. Transparent. Water collapsed 6 of 6 level 2.
We have some basic just terrain types and pieces and bits of dirt, grass, stone, water, and a whole bunch of tiles in there that can be used to sort of seamlessly transition between them. We're going to get into more details about how to do a lot of this stuff once we are into some of the future sessions, but to give you a sense of what it looks like, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open one of these up. And by the way, if you're using the screen reader as I am, you can tell that even though we have the sort of visual components going on in here,
Expanded. Level 3 water 1 of 29.
this is just a tree as far as the screen reader is concerned. So for the visual user, I am able to see what I'm putting into the scene, but this is by design fully accessible using standard sort of controls that a screen reader knows what it is and knows how to interact with it. In order to place one of these objects into the scene, I have basically two ways that I can do it. The first is if I am a visual user who just wants to drop it somewhere. As Stefik mentioned, we have drag and drop support now, so I can just grab this and slide it over to the scene. Wherever I drop it, it will snap it into the grid coordinates. The alternative that I can do is if I am in the tree, as I am right now.
Water dirt corner. Water 1 of 29 level 3.
I can select it as you would normally enter.
Water 1A blue. Watery tile. 320, 200, 288, 288.
I have this object now that is being placed into the scene, and I haven't actually placed it yet. If I wanted to, I could just press escape.
Cancelled placement. Code tabs tab control. Scene.qs tab. Scene.qs 288, 288. Scene palette tree view. Water 1 of 20.
If I go back to the tree and I activate it though.
Water 1A blue. Watery tile.
What I can do with this is I am now moving the cursor around in the environment, and I am telling it where I would like to start placing things. So if I want to place something
288, 320.
right here at 288 and 320, I can just go ahead and press the enter key.
Placed water 1, water 2, 256, 320.
I'm still in placement mode. So I can place multiple objects by moving around and just pressing enter to continuously keep placing this tile as long as I want. So
placed water 2, 256, 300. Placed water 3, 224, 352. Placed water 4, water 5.
So I've just placed a group of these tiles. And as I mentioned before, the cursor gives us information about what's in the scene. So one of the things I can do is if I move onto something where I already have something.
Water, 224, 320.
I don't know if you picked it up there, but the screen reader tells me that there's something already there. I'll move on to another one of them.
Water 2, 256, 320.
When I move onto an area, the cursor first tells me what's already there. It's giving me some information about the scene. There is a water tile here. Water 2 is already placed here. If I had multiple on a spot, you can see that I'm going to just press enter a few times on the same spot.
Placed water 6, placed water 7, water 8.
There's nothing in the engine that stopped me from placing something on the same spot multiple times, because maybe that's something you actually want in your game. You could have something where you have a bunch of different enemies that are all going to like scatter from a starting position. You could have something where maybe these objects have transparency, and so maybe you could see them through each other. Whatever the reason is that you've placed multiple things here, if I move the cursor off of it,
256, 288.
and then I move the cursor back on.
Water 7, water 6, water 5, 3 items, 256, 320.
It'll tell me the first few items that it runs into, and then if there's a bunch of them, it'll also tell me how many there were total, because we don't want to tell you if there's 100 items there. We don't want to list every single one of them. In this case, there were 3 water tiles. It told us what 3 water tiles were, and it told us a total number of them. If I placed even more, it might do water 2, water 4, water 5, 10 items, something along those lines, to give me a sense of what sort of how many things I'm running into there. And using the cursor is going to be the main way that you're getting information from the environment if you're using the screen reader. In order to give a better sense of what is there, we have a couple of things that allow you to manipulate the cursor in some ways, primarily by changing its size. So, oh, I accidentally escaped off of it. Hold on. Oh, I crashed the environment. Oh. Sorry, technical difficulties.
Stop share, meeting.
No, I know what happened there. I actually fixed that bug last night, and we've not pushed a patch for that one yet.
Oh, did you run into what you just fixed?
Yeah, I ran into the exact issue I just fixed.
Maybe we should push a patch later tonight. So
this is all according to plan, so I can tell you about our automatic updating system that we have in Quorum 2.0.
Right.
Allow me to bring the environment back up, and I'll show you where we were.
This is Tyler. How did you actually place water in 2 tiles, 2 separate tiles?
So what I did, and actually here, let me bring it back up and I'll show you again.
Meeting controls window.
Now, normally the environment would remember what projects you have open and whatnot, but because the environment crashed, didn't do that.
You have started screen share alert.
I'm going to go ahead and reopen that. So if I
Quorum unknown. 1.
not sure what my screen reader thinks I have focused here.
Skype. Quorum Studio 2. From Stefic to everyone. So unknown. Unknown. Notif. And you have exit.
Apologies for the technical difficulties.
Unknown. Welcome. OK button pressed. File expanded 1 of 8.
Okay, there we go. We fixed everything.
Collapsed. Edit expanded 2 of 8.
So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reopen that project. I'm going to go to the
New
file.
project control plus N1 of 7. New open project control plus O3 of 7.
I'm doing this from the menu because I find it convenient when I'm using the keyboard, but Control O would get you here as well, or using the button on the toolbar.
File collapsed 1 of 8. Output tabs tab control. Console tab.
In particular, opening a project is this folder-looking icon on the toolbar.
Open dialog file name. Items view. Name project. Items view. Selected.
I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to open the project.qt
Items view.
file.
Open. Unknown.
And something I didn't mention before, but if you go to the scene or palette tabs before you have a scene open,
System.
sorry, I'm having some difficulties right now for some reason. The scene tab shows basically just that you don't have a scene selected and won't let you do anything. You have to be actively on a scene in order to do anything with the scene tab. But if I go ahead and I open that scene back up, I think that Zoom is
you'll have to
somehow
reboot your
Notification from Slack.
machine.
I think Zoom is interfering with my focus somehow because it's telling me that Quorum Studio is not in focus and the screen reader is therefore not reading it.
William, it does. Zoom has a negative impact on screen readers. I encounter it all the time. I do distance learning every single day. And that's just a component you have to be careful of.
For right now, I have shown basically the features I intend to show you with the screen reader for right now. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it off for right now, and I'm going to just audio describe what I'm doing. And we'll just sort of move forward from there. If I'm not giving you sufficient detail, or if you want me to turn the screen reader back on, just let me know.
Quorum. NVDA.
So right now I have gone back to the scene in my environment. So this question of how did I place multiple things? I am going to start by going to the palette again, using the mouse this time. Just go ahead and click on the tab. I'm going to go to Nature Summer 2D, and let's place some dirt. I have a whole bunch of different options which are available inside of here, which are basically just the first one, which is the dirt tile. It is just dirt in all directions, and then a whole bunch of these transitional tiles that allow me to blend together. I might have some dirt that's running into some grass. I might have dirt that's up against some water, and just a bunch of different tiles that allow you to blend them. If I select one of these, either by selecting it and pressing enter or just double clicking, this will place the cursor inside the editor with my object that I want to place. And I can use the arrow keys, or at least I would if, there we go, it's finally gotten focus again. I can use the arrow keys in order to place an object in the scene. So I'm going to press the enter key, and I've just placed that dirt into the scene. If I move the cursor, I am still in this sort of placement mode. So I can use this to hit enter again in a different spot, and now I've just placed more dirt. If I wanted to place a whole block of it, I might just sort of move in this square-like fashion as I'm moving in this 3x3 grid, and just hitting enter over each space I move over to just drop a section of it. Whenever I'm done, I can just press the escape key, and I have just placed this group of dirt into the environment. And you could do this with anything inside the palette, right? Does that answer your question, Tyler?
Yeah. So there's no way to do it with your mouse. It requires the keyboard and then the enter command.
If you wanted to place just a single object, you can do the click and drag like that. But yeah, right now, although this is something that I would personally like to fix, hopefully before the next patch, but you know, schedules as they are. What I am hoping to get is something where you can basically get into that same mode, you double click or something, and then just sort of paint with the mouse like you would in like Microsoft Paint or something. It just wasn't something that got into this release. So if you want to place multiple items, you have to either select it, use the keyboard, press enter, or you can just continuously drag over, which is not ideal, but does work. Before I continue on, are there any other questions?
William, you can actually also pause your notifications on Slack, and so it'll make it so it won't ding.
Yeah, I should probably do that.
It's under the quorum, and then pause notifications, and then you can pause it for however long you want to.
That's a good idea. Let's go ahead and pause it for the next 30 minutes or so here. All right, thank you for that. Well, I sure still got a notification there, didn't I?
Yeah.
I think that you just mentioned that you were having difficulties with this as well.
Yeah, it was doing it to me too. Maybe the screen reader gets it, but not Slack.
Yeah, well, I don't have the screen reader on at the moment, so I'll just go ahead. I'll just close Slack for the moment.
That's probably fine too.
If something happens on Slack that requires my attention, you can go ahead and just grab me.
Yeah.
So at this point, I don't know if we wanted to split up into the beginner and advanced groups at this point, just because from this point, we're basically ready to start actually building stuff with the scene editor. And I'm expecting that the different groups are going to go at different paces for this. So what are your thoughts, Stefik?
Good question. So let's see here. So we've gone through the primary window, and have we done the various editor features and stuff like that, so people know how you like run and compile and do that kind of stuff?
So we haven't done that stuff yet, no.
Why don't we do that stuff too, just to make sure everybody can like run their game, debug their game.
Sure.
You can navigate and stuff like that, because that stuff is going to be probably going to be a good reminder for everybody, just so that we can get around. And then once we do that, then we can probably start splitting up into groups, maybe.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and let's go through the all of that then. The very first thing is I have a scene. I would like to run it. I already showed you the code earlier that allows you to actually run this. It's just this template that looks a lot like our normal game. And so if I just go ahead and I run this code, I will see that it loads my scene in and it renders it in the game exactly as I have. In this case, it's not exactly an exciting game. It is a gray screen that has some dirt kind of splotched around. Importantly, something I do want to draw attention to is I'm going to turn on the screen reader for a moment.
Welcome to NVD. Welcome. Oh, game window.
So I'm in the game window.
William,
Yes.
This is Steve. I just wanted to mention that your game window doesn't come up in the screen share.
That's right, because I'm sharing Quorum Studio currently. Thank you for catching me on that. Let me see if I can fix that here.
Exit.
Apologies for the rough edges. This is the first pants optional epic, and as such, technical difficulties are.
Were pants ever really required for epic? I don't really know. So.
Okay, I'm sharing my entire screen now. So can you see the game at this point?
Yeah.
Yep, we can see it.
Welcome to game window.
So there's a little bit of a hullabaloo here where I'm bringing up the screen reader. I could just tell you what's going to happen because it's going to sound the same either way. I'm in the game right now. I'm going to press tab. I'm going to press the arrow keys. The game does not automatically become magically accessible, even though I've built it with the accessible editor. And that's something that we're going to be talking about throughout Epic, is how you can make these games and make them accessible. And there's a really good reason for this, and this ties back into something I mentioned before. When you are working with the editor, we do not know exactly what you're going to be doing. You could be doing basically anything, right? With the game editor, you might be making something like a top-down RPG. That's what we're going to be doing through a lot of Epic. We're going to be looking at how you can make a game like that. But you could also be making a side-scrolling platformer. You could be making a first-person shooter. You could be making a real-time strategy game. You could be making a puzzle. You could be making a full-fledged GUI like Quorum Studio. Quorum Studio is built with Quorum in the same way that you would build a bunch of your games. So because we don't know what exactly you're doing, we don't know how to make it accessible. All of those games would be accessible in different ways. The way that you make a top-down RPG accessible, you might give some information about how you're moving in a certain way, but that movement's not even going to be the same as you would in a first-person shooter or in a platformer or in a puzzle game. Because you need different kinds of information and we don't know what that is, that's going to be a lot of what we're going to be focusing on over the course of EPIQ, is how you're going to be using the programming logic and the game logic in order to bring information into the game that makes it, A, just run at all. The game needs the programmer to do some work in order to tell it what it needs to do, but also how we can tell the environment that there are certain things we want to convey to the user, or what things are worth telling the screen reader about, or making things accessible through other ways like text-to-speech or sound. And so I'm going to go ahead and just turn the screen reader. I'll leave the screen reader on for right now since it seems to be working. Let's go ahead and look at some of the other things that are available to us in the editor for dealing with our projects. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close the game.
Close.
Quorum Studio.
Quorum Studio 2.0.0 window. Toolbar. Run button Control plus R.
So at this point, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to jump back to the project tree with Command 1 again.
Scene palette tree view. Level 3 dirt 1 of 27.
I'm in the palette. I could be using this to place more things right now. I'm not currently interested in placing stuff with the palette. Let's go ahead and Control Tab.
Projects tree view.
This takes me back to the project view where I have my scene that I opened already. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to move down back to the source code.
Level 2 source code collapsed 3 of 3. Expanded. Level 3 main.quorum 1 of 1. Code tabs tab control. Main.quorum tab. Code edit text box document use libraries.game.game.
This is the same code that I already showed you. If I clicked run on this code, or alternatively, if I use the hotkey F6.
Output tabs tab control.
Or, sorry,
console
not
tab.
F6. It's F4. I always forget the hotkey for this one. So I'm just going to use the menu.
File, edit, view, net, run, expanded. Build control, clean, run control plus R4 of 15.
Control R to run. I'm trying to remember the F keys because that's what we used in Sabians once upon a time, which is deprecated now, and I should know this. So I'm going to hit the run button.
Build success, game window.
And it does the exact same thing that running on the scene did. If you're in the project, it'll run the game as it is. But the reason that I wanted to bring this over to the code is I wanted to look at some of the debugging options. So
close. Quorum Studio 2.0.0 window. Code tabs tab control. Main.quorum tab. Code edit text box document action create game.
When we're working with code, it's pretty common that stuff does not work correctly. As a matter of fact, if you are writing code and there are no problems at all, you are either very, very good or very likely you're not writing a very big program. Just because it's incredibly common that you're going to be making just little mistakes as you're going. The computer will do exactly what you tell it to do, and a lot of times what you're telling it to do is not exactly what you meant for it to do. Because of that, we have the debugger. The debugger just helps us to take a look at what the code is doing at a given point in time. To get an example of this, let's suppose that I had just something in the program where I had made a variable. So I'm going to go ahead and just add some code to this. This is technically the first Quorum code that we're writing over the course of this EPIQ. My screen reader is being just a little bit silent again.
T-E-G-E-R space 5.
Again, that little buzz that we just heard, I mentioned this a little earlier. We have spelling error checking inside Quorum Studio now. It reports it to the screen reader. Technically speaking, integer a equals was an error. It was not a correct piece of code until I gave it a variable for it to attach to. Like I had to give that variable a value. If you're typing something and you run into that, then it's entirely possible that you haven't actually made an error. You're just not done typing yet. So I think that's related to what you were running into on the mailing list, the comment that you sent us, Pranav. If you run into something like that, where whether or not it's actually like incorrect is up for debate, but if it's annoying, that's like totally legitimate. Just feel free to let us know if that's something that's an issue. I'm going to go ahead now and I am going to output this value.
O-U-T-P-U-T-A.
The output statement just prints it to the console. So before I do anything with the debugger, I'm just going to go ahead and run this with, as I learned, Control R.
Build successful in game window.
It pops open the game as it did before. If I look down in the console, which I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to close this game.
Quorum Studio 2.0.0 window.
I'm going to go ahead and navigate down to the console.
Output tabs tab control. Console tab. Blank. Line feed. 5. Builds 5.
I can see in the console that I have output the value of that integer variable that I placed earlier. The reason that I care about being able to output stuff like this is mostly just because you're going to use it all the time when you're trying to get something from your program or when you're trying to debug things. But if I want to debug things, I have a couple options. I could just put output statements all over the place and try and kind of scratch my head and figure it out. I actually do that fairly commonly. But if you don't want to do that and you want to have a better sense of what's going on, the other thing that you can do is you can pop out the debugger. So I'm going to go to a particular line of code, and I am going to yes.
Can you control plus a couple times to make your text bigger?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is this hard to read?
Code tabs. 160% zoom.
Is that better?
Yep.
So I did not mention that, but that's actually a really good point. I completely forgot that I should talk about that. In Quorum Studio, we have what we call Smart Zoom. Basically, this just allows you to, using Control plus or Control minus, similar to what you would do like on a website to make it larger or smaller, you can blow up the size of the entire editor. And this is something that, especially after Sodbeans, where it was very, very difficult to make the environment response to make it look larger or smaller in a way that was useful. We put a lot of effort into trying to make sure that this gives you that information. I should cover some of the other smart navigation keys as well, but I'll go ahead and I'll talk about the debugger first. And by the way, if at any point during this, if I have something on my screen that's just kind of hard to see or anything like that, feel free to let me know. For right now, let's go ahead and head down to one of these lines.
Integer equals 5.
And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place a breakpoint on it. As with basically everything else, I can either do that using the menu.
File, edit, view, nav, expanded, build control plus B1 of 15, set toggle breakpoint control plus K13 of 15.
Using the menu, I can toggle the breakpoint on this line, or I could use the Control K shortcut. If I do that,
code tabs tab control, output A.
Visually, line 25 now has this thick red bar across the entire line, which is a visual indicator that there is a breakpoint on this line, which is going to, when I run the program using the debugger mode, it's going to stop on that line. It's going to pause and it's going to let me get some information about it. If I ever want to know what breakpoints I have in the program, I can also go down to the console down in the bottom.
Output tabs tab control, console tab, console output document 5.
And I can use the control tab again to move over to the breakpoints. Or if you're using the mouse, you can just click on the breakpoints tab.
Tree table, cell file row 1, cell main.quorum row 3 column 1, cell 25 row 3 column 2.
You can use this table. You can also see where your breakpoints are located. In this case, it's telling me on main.quorum on line 25, I have a breakpoint. Let's go ahead and actually run this in the debugger now.
Projects tree view, main.quorum 1 of 1 level 3.
As with basically everything else, if I use the menu, I can get over to it using the keyboard. There's also a shortcut for it, or alternatively, we can use this delightful little bug icon on the toolbar, and this will put us into the debugger. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna click that.
Build successful in 0.04 seconds.
The game has popped up and it is now a black screen. So before I actually go and explain what's going on, I would just like to hear people's thoughts. Why is this a black screen as opposed to what I saw before?
This is Adam. Is it because you put that breakpoint so it's stopping the code during debugging?
Yeah, so it's paused the code while it's debugging, and in particular, it hasn't gone through into the code to the point where it starts drawing things yet. You can see even that in my Quorum Studio code, on line 29, I have this code that loads that scene in, it brings everything in and makes it pop up, and I don't have that yet because I have only hit line 25. I'm only on this line where I'm setting the value of an integer to 5. So why bother to pause the program like this? The debugger is really powerful for letting us get information about the scene, not about the scene, about the program that is running, using in particular a couple of the tabs that are on here, which is the call stack and what I consider to be the most helpful, the variables tab. If I click on this, alternatively, I could do as I did before. I could jump down to the console, tab over to it. If I look inside of it, there are a few different things that are here. I have me, which is basically just saying this is the file that I'm in right now. There is also this A variable. This is the thing that I'm assigning right now. And if I look at the value, currently it's undefined. The A value, I'm stopped on line 25, and I haven't run that line of code yet. I'm just about to. The value currently is nothing. I haven't set it yet. But if I use the debugger buttons at the top, I can change that. the first thing that I can do is this sort of just arrow jutting over to the right. Alternatively, using the menu or the shortcuts, you'd be able to find this alternatively. This arrow allows me to jump to the next line. It will execute what was on that line that I was just on, line 25. And I can look down inside my value table again. And I can see that the value is now set to 5. It's the value that that line of code just sets it to, right? Among the other options that are there on that line, I can also, I'm going to move forward to line 28. In this case, this line of code is doing something more complicated. It's getting the file and it's telling it to go do something. That set path code explicitly tells it to go do something, and that means it has to go run some code somewhere else. It's in a different file. And so if I want to go into that file and see what it's doing, I can click this other button, which is the arrow going into a box. And then this shows me what that code is inside that function. Now, I'm not expecting you guys to look at this and magically know what that code is. The set path native, it's just like going and calling some other code. In this particular case, that it's actually doing something kind of complicated, that's system actions, which is not important to what we're doing right now. It won't be anything you're touching. The important part out of this is just that this code lived somewhere else. I can go and I can look at it. I can jump inside by using this step into is what that's called in the debugger. I can see that if I open the menu and go into it, there is the step over, step into, and step out commands. And step out is what we're going to see next. This is that arrow coming out of a box on the toolbar, or alternatively what I'm looking at in the menu right here. If I go ahead and I hit that, I can see it immediately ejects me back out of the action that I'm in. In that particular example, there was only one line of code, but you can imagine that that might have been like 200 lines of code. It might have been a bunch of stuff inside this thing that we just jumped into. So having this button to immediately get you back out is helpful if you're ever inside of something that you didn't really want to be there, or you don't really care about what else is happening there. You want to go back to what else you're doing. At this point, I could continue to press the step forward button, that forward-facing arrow. I could just keep clicking that, and you can see what will happen is I'll just go one line at a time, line by line, including going into, now I'm in a different file because this is running something in the game engine and it's doing some stuff behind the scenes. But at this point, what's probably more useful is I can click the fast forward button.
Continue button, Control plus F8.
It's weird, my screen reader recognized that one and it was not voicing for a while with Zoom here. If I look
Running
at the game now,
game window.
My game is now running. And so there's nothing obvious on the screen to indicate that it's doing anything right now because the game is just, it's some dirt floating in the empty void of space. But if I had anything that was like spinning or animated in any way, you would see that this is code that's continuously running. Basically clicking the fast forward button just says, resume the execution of the program. And it will continue to run until either it hits the end of the program stops. So in this case, that would be like I clicked the close button and therefore the entire program shuts down. Or alternatively, if I had another breakpoint, it would keep going until it hit that breakpoint. So this is part of why the debugger is useful is if I wanted to, I could do something like, let's go ahead and close this.
Taskbar.
I'm going to go ahead and close this file as well.
Quorum Studio 2, close button, main.quorum tab.
And we're going to get into more detail about how the particular bits and pieces of the game engine work in the future sessions. But if I start by looking at this update action, the update action is something that gets called on every single frame of animation in the game. You use it for things like animating a character, making something spin, like updating a timer. The important part about it is that, for what we're doing right now at least, is that I can use it to see something that is getting continuously called in the code, and I want to show you what happens when I put a debugger and breakpoint in there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just output a value.
O-U-T-U-T, quote, H-E-L-L-R-L-D, quote.
So I am now outputting hello world, the sort of standard first-time greeting of many a programmer writing something for the first time. Importantly, this lives inside the update loop, which I just told you gets called on every single frame. I am going to go ahead and click on the number over to the left side. This does the exact same thing as going to the menu or using that shortcut that I talked about. If I click on the line, that'll place a debugger breakpoint there. And if I go ahead and I run it in the debugger now,
Build successful in 0.04 seconds.
For some reason, the debugger is not, the breakpoints are not highlighting green as they should, which is a little odd. But you can see that I pressed the fast forward button a couple times here, and it first got that A value, A equals 5, it output it. I clicked it again, it did hello world. What happens if I click this fast forward button again? Audience participation time.
Obviously, it's going to start the graphics.
So if I go ahead and I click this fast forward button again, we'll see that it output hello world again.
Running application game.
It does actually, at this point, the game engine has drawn something, but the window is considered non-responsive because I have paused the program. Every time I click this fast forward button, it's continuously hitting this line 39, this breakpoint that I have here, because on every single frame of animation, it's hitting this code. And that's basically what I wanted to impress upon you, is just that if I press fast forward, even though at this point the game should be up and it should be running, it keeps pausing it because it keeps hitting this brand new breakpoint that it's hitting, because this update is getting called on every frame. If I
File Explorer
remove it by just clicking on it again, or if I use the toggle breakpoint key, then at this point, I fast forward.
Game 1. Game.
Is it still hitting it?
Yeah, that's my fault. I think I
Did you break something in the debugger?
probably. Sometimes you have to restart the program to get rid of a breakpoint for some reason. I don't know why. So.
This is a helpful moment for me to show you one of the other buttons that's here. This big old stop button will close any project that you're currently running, including if it's in the debugger. So if I click that, the game closes.
Stop button control plus code tabs tab control main.quorum tab code edit text.
I'm gonna try really hard not to talk over the screen reader. It's so easy for me to do. I'm gonna click the debugger again.
Tool build successful in 0.04 seconds.
We hit that first breakpoint, the one that I've kept around. If I go ahead and click fast forward.
Continue button game 1 game window.
It is now showing me the game. It's now running. You can also see in my console, it is just spamming me with hello world, hello world, hello world, hello world, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60 times a second, because that's about how many frames per second we're running at. I'm going to close this before I have about 17,000 lines of hello world. You can actually see that the output, it takes so long to write stuff to the console.
Taskbar.
Not because like Quorum Studio is slow or anything. I/O is incredibly slow on a computer. That's part of why it takes so long to download or install things when you're getting them off the internet. It takes a while for it to get to you over the internet, but it takes a really long time too to just write it to a file or to communicate between a running process and something else. You don't need to know the specifics of that, but basically just output is slow. The entire window becomes unresponsive. So you're totally fine to use output, but just a warning, try to avoid using output inside the update statement. It will make things messy. There is one more other thing that I'd like to talk about before we sort of move out of this getting introduced to Quorum Studio step and moving into playing around with the scene editor some more and starting to actually build something. And so in particular, I want to talk about the smart navigation. As always, I'm going to start by using the menu so that I can see that it's in there.
Quorum Studio, Quorum team expanded 6, build control, go to line control plus G1 of 8.
Inside the navigate here, there are a bunch of different things I have. One is the go to line. This will just take you directly to whatever line of code you want to type in. But we also have some things that are special in Quorum Studio that we did not have in Sodbeans, which is
previous action control plus alt plus up 2 of 8.
I have something to jump to the previous action as well as the
next action control plus alt plus down 3 of 8.
And I can also go to previous scope and the next scope. When we start hitting things like conditionals or doing loops, it'll be more obvious what that means. But basically, scope is just inside a block of code inside the control structure. You can jump between those. And so that's really helpful for something like I want to start by, say, I am inside this main file. I just want to see what actions are there. One of the things that I could do is I could go back to my
navigate collapsed 4 of 8, toolbar, continue button control, projects tree view, main.quorum 1 of, code tabs tab control, main.quorum tab, code edit text box document integer equals 5.
There you go. If I remember the correct hotkeys, I get back to the text editor here. And so what I can do is I can use my Control Alt up and down.
Action main. Action create game. Action update. Number seconds. Action create game.
I can use this to go back and forth, and I can just kind of scan to see what actions are in here and to quickly navigate back and forth between them. And once we start hitting the conditionals and the code blocks, it'll be more obvious why it's helpful. But Control Alt left and right will also take me to the different scopes, which in this particular code is just the actions, but
action create game, end, /*, action update, number seconds, end.
You can see that doing that is also taking me to the comments that I have, so you can use that to quickly navigate between the comments. And you can also use it to get to the end of functions. So this is something that is useful if you're using the screen reader, but also just kind of generally, if you feel like being a power user who knows how to use the keyboard to do, you know, all sorts of wizardry, you can use it to quickly navigate around and impress your friends. So that's about all that I want to hit in this particular session, and we're about out of time. We have a few minutes though. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay, well, that seems good. So the purpose of that session, the learning objective, was to just make sure that everybody knows what all the features are. But we don't expect everybody will have memorized the hotkeys. We don't expect that you'll know all the details of how the code works or anything like that yet. We're just trying to make sure that you have kind of an overview of what's all there. So you kind of know when we start going into individual parts, you have kind of an idea of what is left. So why don't we take just a 5-minute break so that people can kind of have stuff. Oh, you know what? Actually, before we do that, Dania, don't we need to give out the code for each session? Is that, am I remembering this incorrectly? I don't know if you can.
I put the codes in Slack.
Oh, you did? Okay, great. So you're already managing this part?
Yeah, I've already put the beginning codes in. At the end of the day, I'll put the ending codes.
Okay, so you're way ahead of me. So typical standard procedure then, basically. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you then. Mm-hmm. So let's take a 3-minute break. And during that time, Leslie had a question on support. I've got Tim Cluthy's going to join you in a breakout room really quick. And everybody else, let's just take 5 minutes. So let's come back at 11:03. And Leslie, if you stay on, I'll put you in with Tim, and we'll try to get that installation issue sorted for you, if that's okay with you. And William, I need you to make me host again.
Sure. Oh, also let me stop the recording.
Oh yeah.